And I do think that within the cultural sector, we're so much further than any other sector. I think as part of my MBA research, I've been analysing a few websites. And one thing I found is that companies that really pride themselves on being environmentally friendly, so either they're producing environmentally friendly products or they're building technology that supports the environment in some way, whether it's, recycling or things like that. These are companies where their only purpose is to have a positive impact on the planet. And I've been measuring their websites, and their websites are awful. They're absolutely some of the worst, most impactful, heaviest websites I've ever looked at. And you just think, if those companies are struggling to really understand this as an issue, then it's kind of okay. The fact that it is even vaguely on our radar is a huge step forward. I think the cultural sector is doing so much more to think about their impact, and whether it comes to general environmental issues or other parts of being good companies and kind of inclusion, diversity, and their impact on society. That isn't to say the sector always gets it right. I think sometimes things don't work, sometimes things don't move as fast as we want them to, but the cultural sector is doing an awful lot better than some other sectors.
Well, yeah, as slightly worrying as it is that they're not paying attention to that side of things, I guess it's a bit of a comfort that we're at least a bit ahead of the curve there. I think when the pandemic hit and everyone sort of turned online, obviously that's had a huge impact in the way people are working, long-lasting changes in the way people are going to hybrid working, or a lot of people are working from home now. And I think, a few years ago, there was a sort of assumption that, digital was greener because it wasn't, we weren't using paper, we weren't traveling, but actually digital has a whole carbon footprint of its own, and a lot of implications that were people didn't see, I guess, or weren't aware about. And I think it's, some of the work that you've been doing has been really helpful in bringing to light actually how much goes into a digital carbon footprint, and the full scale of servers and hosting and data centers, which just sitting day to day uploading something to social media, you maybe don't think about it.
Yeah, it's quite scary when you think about it. I mean, the research, when we look at the research around this, how much power are our data centers using, how much is the internet using up, the research quickly becomes out of date because the rate at which the population is growing and adoption of technology means that often research is slightly out of date. But for the last kind of few years, the energy used by the information technology sector, I think it ranks it at around kind of 17 on a list of countries. So if, for example, the internet was a country, or if servers were a country, they'd be ranked 17 in the list of countries using energy. Which means that we're talking about the amount of energy and the carbon footprint of a very large developed country, which is all really scary. It's all really doom and gloom. And you're absolutely right. People have always, for a long time, gone, well, we're going to scrap our printed brochure and we're going to do a digital one because that's better for the environment. Or we're not going to do this flyer, we're going to do a social media ad instead because that's better for the environment. And in a lot of cases, that's true. Digital is better, but we're now starting to get to a point where the amount of data that we're storing and collecting and tracking online means that even some of those savings between hard printed material and digital material is starting, like that gap's getting narrower. I read something the other day that said spending an hour online now uses the equivalent energy or has the same carbon footprint as reading a book for 1 hour. So all the kind of materials and the carbon footprint and the manufacturing and the delivery of that book, the amount of paper that you're going to read in an hour, reading the internet for an hour is exactly the same. So now we're starting to see this kind of gap between kind of hard materials and how we absorb information kind of from paper, and the gap between digital communications sort of narrowing quite a bit. And I think we're now at the point where we do have to consider that. I think some of the recent, kind of news stories like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and how damaging they are for the environment, those getting into mainstream media is really starting to make people think, oh, okay, like these data centers and these cryptocurrency farming centers are really bad. But somebody said something to me the other day, which I thought was really interesting. She said that, yes, that stuff is getting into the kind of mainstream media, but actually there's more information about how much money you can make from cryptocurrencies getting into mainstream media. And I was like, oh, that's also quite sad, but very true.